What's up, Lenny? How you doing, man?
Great. How are you? Love that intro.
So I brought you on today because I wanted to talk mostly about the precinct project and the Republican Party in a general sense and your opinion on all things political. But before we do that, I wanted to get a sense, or I wanted to give everybody really a sense of who you are, what you do, and why you think they should care about what you have to say.
Well, I think it really all starts back in 97 when I got into the media business. I got a job at KDKA, and it kind of launched me into a career that I never thought I would be involved in, writing commercials and placing ad schedules and that sort of thing. So through the media business, long story short, I ended up starting my own ad agency. And then one of my high school classmates, actually, our Chartiers Valley's 1983 student class president was Bill Peduto. And when he made his comment about, if you don't like the homeless people and the open drug use, go shop in the malls, I decided to get involved in politics. How this guy has such a different ideology than me, and we went to basically the same schools all our life, I have no idea, but I was fit to be tied. I'm in the business of creating demand for my clients and building customers and sending them through their retail stores and that sort of thing. So that really hit me hard. And I was like, look, I've got to do something. So in working with the Tony Moreno campaign, we got rid of Peduto, but I'm not sure we did any better with the guy that's in there now. But that was my start. And that's how I met the people that started the precinct project here in Pittsburgh, Gina Paulus and Karen Paulette, who introduced me to the importance of building the Republican committee in Allegheny County. And I didn't know what a committee person was or what the responsibilities were. And when I found out and I learned more about it, I was like, this is the answer to the test. This is how we win. And again, not to go into great detail, but we've currently got 700 roughly, I think a little more than 700 current committee members. We have room for 2,700. So we're 2,000 short. And, a lot of this grassroots, ground up politics we're missing out on because we're just outmanned. And there's no excuse for it. Allegheny County has the highest number of registered Republicans of any county in the state. And we're outnumbered, granted, but it still doesn't change the fact that there's more Republicans in Allegheny County than any other county. Why isn't our county committee full? Mm-hmm. So that led me everything from the advertising to the Moreno campaign to the precinct project led me to my latest priority, which is to build out Allegheny County's committee to the full 2,700 by January of 2024. That's the goal. So
just so everyone knows, who is Tony Moreno?
Oh, Tony Moreno was the first in a while, Republican nominee for mayor of Pittsburgh. Okay. So that was my first foray into the political campaign. I was part of Tony's inner circle and, really jack of all trades, fundraising, messaging, commercial placement, you name it. We did it. So it was a true trial by fire, and it was exhilarating. We lost, but we were outnumbered 6-1 and we lost 3-1. So it proved that you can close the gap. And in some of these races, state races especially, we don't have to win in Allegheny County. We just got to close the gap and let the rest of the state bring us in. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of strategies. I mean, the strategy for the Republicans right now has changed since November 1st of last year, or whatever the day before the election was. The next day, I think you and I had breakfast the next day to talk about, lick our wounds and talk about what the next steps were. And everybody seems to be on the same page, so we shall see.
Are they on the same page?
Well, I mean, wow, that's a tough one to answer. Not everyone is on the same page, no. but the people that are on the correct page are all on the same page. So they understand that voter outreach, if you have 50% of the Republicans voting, we got to do something to get those other 50%. And the answer to that seems to be the need to embrace mail-in ballots.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, if we have to shame them into filling out the mail-in ballot and send it in, we can't win without you. If you're not going to vote in person, will you please fill this ballot out and drop it in a mailbox? I'm not even sure. Does a mail-in ballot even require postage?
I've never used one.
I don't think it does. But regardless, can you please? That's the message. So, while some of in the party are, want to talk about China and Ukraine and Biden and, everything else that they can't control, we here in the Republican Committee of Allegheny County understand that we need to reach out to unlikely Republican voters. We've got to make sure that they fill out, and that once they fill out the application, we can track them. We know that they filled it out. We can follow up with them. They can check the status of their ballot so they know when it's been received. There's a lot of advantages to it, and we have to embrace it. As much as everybody hates it, until we can get a new governor, it's here to stay.
Well, I think you just hit the nail on the head, because they're here to stay. And so this approach where we want to take a legislative strategy to getting rid of them is not something that's grounded in reality.
Not right now.
No, it certainly isn't. So we need a more comprehensive strategy on how to catch up with Democrats who, unfortunately, are outflanking us on virtually every front, especially when it comes to mail-in ballots. But I would also argue from a turnout perspective, it's interesting because, I spend most of my day buried in data, and you can see very clearly the turnout metrics for Democrats are largely better. But more than that, they're consistent. They still have people who are disengaged. And, I think you and I agree that those are people who are, I guess you could qualify them as the blue dog Democrats, right? These are people that are union Democrats that don't necessarily align with the Democratic Party as it has evolved, particularly over the last 5 to 10 years. But they still have a large enough and more consistent turnout than Republicans do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think trying to identify those Democrats that are Democrats only because they want to keep their union job, but they vote Republican almost every time, it's really difficult to identify those people. You almost have to ask, a lot of your blue-collar Republican friends, hey, who do you know? I mean, I've got a guy in my neighborhood that promised that he was going to get me a list of just those people. His friends that are blue-collar union guys that he knows are conservative, but they're registered as Democrats. I mean, there's no way on a list, on a voting list, that you can identify those people. They don't identify themselves that way. So it's a challenge. Reaching out to the independents, another challenge. I can't imagine an independent that wants more government. It's kind of why they're an independent most of the time, or a libertarian. Right. They want less government. And yet, I don't think we've captured any of those in great numbers either. And how, I have no idea. I mean, especially over the last couple of years with mandates and forced vaccinations, my God.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest challenge is that most independents are Republican defectors. It very rarely goes the other way. You know what I mean?
They hate both parties equally, I think.
Right. But the challenge is it's been this war of attrition on the part of the Republican Party, because the Democrat numbers tend to stay relatively stable while we lose voters to the unaffiliated, the independents, Green Party, Libertarian, so on and so forth. I mean, there's lots of them. But at the end of the day, when you look at the graphs, it's near 50-50, except this huge purple chunk that is taken, unfortunately, directly from the Republican Party. And I think the underlying strategy is that we need to do a better job making amends with those people and ask them to reconsider the positions that they've taken, not just against the Democratic Party, but also against the Republican Party, because the reality is their defection is ultimately what's creating the single biggest advantage that Democrats have. And, from my perspective, this isn't about a declaration of war on Democrats. I have very little interest in that. What I have an interest in is returning to, and a degree of moderacy that simply doesn't exist anymore. Because of the way the parties have split out, you have this, 60% of people in the United States that don't have a voice any longer. We live in these social media silos where you just hear one side barking at the other side, and they're completely separate from the realities that most Americans live every day. And so one of the things I want to get better at, and I know you agree with me on this, is getting back to center. Because at the end of the day, if we fail to do that, we are going to really struggle to maintain our relevancy as a party, and our beliefs and our way of life might go along with it. And so one of the reasons I framed it up that way is because when we talk about something like the Precinct Project, something that, at least in my mind, is designed to put more boots on the ground, equip them with the right knowledge to have meaningful and constructive conversations with the voters in their communities, that's probably the single most important thing that people like you and I can do. And so I really want to shine a light on this. So tell me, and I don't remember the exact answer, so you worked on the Tony Moreno campaign. That was your first foray into politics. Right. What year was that?
The general election, I believe, was November of 2021. So it was this, the year prior to that, up until November of 2021.
It's a fascinating dynamic, and I think it actually connects really well with the general attitude of Republicans who have become much more engaged. Like, we all know what happened in 2020, right? What I've seen is there's been a huge spike in people that are paying attention, which I think is a very good thing.
Great.
But more importantly, people that are interested in getting involved. And so your experience in that campaign, I'm certain, created some light bulbs popping in your head. Can you talk a little bit about what moments brought you to the belief system that you have?
Well, the Tony Moreno campaign was interesting because the city of Pittsburgh has 804 committee seats available. There's 402 voting districts with a committee man and a committee woman in each one for a total of 804. The first Pittsburgh Republican committee meeting that I saw was at Tony Moreno's headquarters on the West End. There were 12 people there. 12 out of 804. I believe the number is somewhere around 104 right now. Now, that's a big step, but it's not enough. It's not even close to enough. I mean, it's 1/8 of what we need. We need poll watchers and the polls in East Liberty and Homewood, and, especially from these people who, I've had people reach out to me, committee members, committee chairs, reach out to me and say, what I'm trying to do building the committee is a waste of time until we fix the cheating. Now, okay. I'll ask you, how many of those people have raised their hand to work in Homewood during Election Day? I'll sit there all day. I mean, I've got my own community, and I'm outside my voting place for the full 13 hours, two times a year for the primary and the general. I got my own responsibilities. But some of these people that want to complain about cheating will go where the cheating is most likely happening, which would be, if I had to take a guess, I would say in the city of Pittsburgh. But you don't see that. I had that same person, when I asked them to do just that, replied that, listen, pal, I've been working on election integrity for 6 years now. And my question was, well, where are you? Show me some results. You just admitted that it's a mess. So clearly your 6 years of complaining, it really wasn't working. I mean, let's be honest. Didn't do a thing. We need doers, not complainers. And if everyone that thinks that election integrity is the most important part of us winning elections again, called the election integrity director and signed up to be a poll watcher, poll worker, judge of elections in some of those outlying areas where the cheating is most likely to happen. We could use that help. That'd be great. Any volunteers? So, it's just, there is a fracturing of the party, and it's sad because, again, it comes down to doers and complainers, and that's the split. Mm-hmm. And then the complainers will tell you that they've been working on this process for, yada, yada, yada. Well, where are we? Why are we in this mess? If you've been in an election integrity game for 6 years, why are we here right now? So, again, to bring it back to positive, we are looking for 2,000 doers, people, and you don't have to do a lot. Everybody thinks that you have to go out and knock doors every weekend for, 6 weeks leading up to an election. It's not the case at all. If everyone does a little bit, then we do a lot. Mm-hmm. For example, when I started the Heidelberg Committee, there was a committee man elected who was a great guy, but he wasn't a committee builder. He was a committee of one for 2 years. So getting involved in the precinct project, I felt, I'm sort of a hypocrite if I'm not involved in my own committee. So I ran for his seat and I won. Now, this guy's a great guy. He's Heidelberg's one of our councilmen. And he does a fantastic job, and voters come up to me and tell me how good a job he does as our councilman. So we were able to mend, fences a little bit. I ran against him. There was some animosity there for a second. But he said, me as councilman and you as the committee man, this is a good team. So what we did, we started sending out invitations to meetings. I set up a meeting in our community room. We probably had 5 people the first time. I think the second meeting we had 20. Now, this is a tiny community with only 250 Republicans. So all these, committees that have, 1,000 Republicans in their borough that say they can't get 20 committee members, you can. So anyway, we've had as many as 29 of our residents show up at meetings. They don't. Some of them show up to every single one. Some miss a couple here and there when they have prior commitments. But that's 10% of the 200. It's over 10% of the 250 registered Republicans we have in the community. So when it came time to do some canvassing efforts in our community, I asked for a raise of hands at our meeting, and we had 9 people. We were able to hit all the Republican homes and included the 138 independent homes that we didn't think we'd have a chance to hit because we didn't think we'd have the manpower. Now, for a small community to be able to get 9 people out on the street the Saturday before the election, if we had all 1,326 voting districts doing that, we'd be in good shape. And yeah. No, we took it a step further. On Election Day, I had signs made up. We were giving away free copies of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. I had a big table set up behind my wife's Pathfinder. We had American flags stuck in the ground. We had sample ballots and a sign that said, "Come see a sample ballot before you vote," especially for first-time voters. We'd like to talk to them, right? Had a big sign on that table, Republican Committee or Heidelberg Republican Committee. And you would have thought it was Barnum and Bailey's Republican Circus, what we had going on in that parking lot that day. And I was able to get another 30 emails from Republicans so that I could stop spending money sending them letters, and I could email them instead. But the interactions we had with them were priceless. One lady came up, asked me if she could come to our meeting, and asked me if she could bring her kids. She had a 8-month-old, her 6-year-old son, and her 16-year-old daughter. And her 6-year-old daughter wanted to know how she can get involved. And we had to, slow down. Got a couple more years there. But, I mean, how good is that?
Yeah.
So these are the things that if you want to build the community. Now, on top of that, every Democrat that voted in Heidelberg looked over at us like, what are they doing? There was no Democrat representation there at all. We made them look horrible. And it mattered. We got 182 votes total for the Republican candidate in 2018. The highest number of Republican votes we had this time was 245. So from 182 votes to 245, we did our job as a committee with our canvassing effort the Saturday before and our effort at the polls for the full 13 hours. So these are the things that have to be done that are not being done. I mean, nobody's camping out outside their polling place with a sign and a table and giving away tchotchkes, and they should be. It's the details that matter. So
I agree. Listen, one of the there's a couple things that I want to comment on. The first is that when the Democrats see, what did you call it, the Republican circus?
Barnum and Bailey's Republican.
Right.
Yeah.
So when they see that, what they see is effort. What they see is that, we are going to challenge the status quo that has been created in our society, particularly over the past 5 years. We're seeing more and more people get engaged, not enough, but we're seeing more. But more importantly, and you hit on something that I thought was important. You had a 16-year-old come up to you, understand the problem, and throw her hat in the ring to get involved. And I think one of the things that I've observed over the past year and a half is just the sheer number of people under the age of 25 that have taken an interest in politics, have a far more nuanced understanding of how political discourse, or a lack thereof, can impact a society. And they've stepped up to get involved at their local universities, at their high schools. You're seeing more and more Republican clubs become a thing at the K-12 level. And at public schools, we need that type of dynamic to exist. And, one of the things I want to do as someone who's a deep supporter of local political campaigns and, the people that run those things on a volunteer basis, we need school boards to support those types of clubs. Right? Do you have, what are your thoughts on young people getting more engaged?
Well, the irony of the story I just told you about the 16-year-old is that her mother homeschools them. Shocking, right? If there was a way to find out what parents homeschool their children, there's a list of people that would probably like to get involved. I mean, they're so upset with the system, they don't even have their kids in the public school system. Mm-hmm. So, that's one issue. We do have a Young Republicans organization. That's all I'll say about that. But, it's very important. I mean, I'm 57 years old. It's hard for me to walk neighborhoods and go up, 20 steps and back down on an entire street. If you live in a neighborhood that, has a lot of steps and a hilly terrain. We could use the 25-year-olds to get out there and do that. I'm not sure what the, plan is for outreach. I haven't seen any leaders emerge that said, hey, I'm going to take care of this. I'm going to start canvassing the local universities and finding out who the conservative group, young conservative groups are. Finding out if there's a conservative high school group that you could reach out to. I'm not sure that anyone's doing that work, and it's important because, boy, if we don't change the narrative with the younger generation, they're, irreparably broken. I mean, it's that dire, in my opinion.
Well, what do we know about what young people think about what it means to be Republican?
Well,
what do we really know?
I can only use, my children as an example. Now, of course, they've been indoctrinated since they were born. So neither one of my kids are woke. Let's put it that way. I think a lot of we lose a lot of battles with the younger people over abortion. Yeah. That's just a fact. And you can say what you want to say about that, but there are 20-somethings that would be conservatives if the conservatives didn't fight the abortion issue like they do and took more of a libertarian view on it of, get the government out of my business. So that's a big disconnect. How that's fixed, I have no idea. That's a little above my pay grade. I'm just a simple committee man. But a
Don't
lot
sell
of
yourself short.
a lot of it is, we're lucky in my school district, Chartiers Valley. They have a conservative administration. Even though they have a 6-3 advantage on school board, the 6 Democrats on our school board are not crazy. That's all I can really say is that they're not crazy, thank God. And we have a relatively conservative administration. But there's no guarantee it's going to stay that way. And when I look at neighboring communities like Mount Lebanon, Chartiers Valley and Mount Lebanon were rivals back in the 80s when I was in high school. And there couldn't be 2 more different school districts at this point. I mean, they've got a real mess on their hands. In Mount Lebanon, I think one of the board members was accused of rape. It's that bad. And how do you change the hearts and minds in that school district? I mean, they're being bombarded by, this narrative every day at school. And their parents are probably more than likely liberals as well, and part of the woke generation. So
I'm going to challenge that, though, because I don't know that that's necessarily true. I think most parents are paying attention.
Well, maybe that's it, too. I know that a lot of recent graduates move in to Mount Lebanon, recent college graduates, each, the husband and the wife each make $100,000 a year, and they buy their first home in Mount Lebanon. I know that that's changed the demographics of that area quite a bit since the Tim Murphy days. But I don't know. I really honestly don't know the answer to that. But I wish we had someone that was in the 20-something age group that would, take the reins on that project, because I think it's important. And I think there are more conservatives out there than young conservatives out there than we know.
I agree. So what gives me hope is that through the process of learning how people think and where those thoughts tend to land on a spectrum, what I figured out is, obviously there's a big political spectrum where liberals are on one side, conservatives are on the other. Most people land somewhere in the middle, like a bell curve, right?
Right.
Wokeness can be described very similarly. So there are varying degrees of woke. And I'll give you an example. My wife's cousin is as blue as they come. But I love this guy. And part of the reason that I love him is because he's capable of understanding what he values from, and you can call it a equity and inclusion initiative, whatever, right? And the absurd. Right. And so I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about with the absurd. So I read recently that the University of California at Berkeley social work department has determined that they no longer want to use the word field within their vernacular.
I saw this.
Right. So when you refer to a social worker doing field work, they're suggesting that there's some sort of racial undertone associated with the word field. And when you hear from, my wife's cousin, who is a black man, that's absurd, it gives me hope for the future. It leads me to believe that these people are not completely nuts.
I'm glad you said that, because I just read, and this is pretty much exactly the same thing, that one of the differences between the conservative movement and the liberal woke movement is that the conservatives can draw, I think it might have been Jordan Peterson, that they will draw a line in the sand. Okay? White nationalism and bigotry is not okay.
Right.
And I'm offended if you were to wave a Nazi flag or hang one outside your house and call yourself a conservative Republican. Mm-hmm. I'd be the first one at your house telling you to take it down.
Yep.
No, of course, you're right to do whatever you want to do, but there's a line in the sand that we will draw. And there seems to be no line in the sand on the left. And I think that's a fair statement. I mean, when you are talking about having gender sex change operations for kids, pre-18-year-old children.
Right.
What the hell are we doing?
Right.
I mean, that child's brain is not developed enough to know what they want at 13, 14, 15. It's a very confusing time. I remember it well. Hey, when you do what you want to do when you're 18 it's up to you. You're an adult.
That's right.
But if they won't draw a line in the sand with that, where will they?
Well,
that's just one example. And that's the problem. There's no one on the left that's saying, wait a minute, that's a bridge too far.
But there are. And I think
apparently
but here's
we'd like
the
to hear
issue.
more from them.
Right, but here's the issue. They have been silenced. And this goes back to this issue where moderacy is not tolerated,
right,
especially on the left.
Pick a side.
Right. So, but one of the, I think the transgender issue is a fascinating one because, I get my hand slapped all the time because I just don't believe that children should have any awareness that this is a thing. Now, that's my personal belief. But at the end of the day, we as a country have had laws that have prohibited children from doing things that have been deemed harmful for as long as I can remember. Right. You can't buy cigarettes. You can't buy alcohol. You can't get a tattoo.
And you can't even buy alcohol when you're 18.
Right.
As an adult, that's the one thing you can't do.
So why is this different? And the argument that I've heard that I vehemently disagree with is that it's not harmful like those things. I'm like, wait a minute.
It's confusing.
Well, it's not only that, it's permanent surgery.
Right. Oh, that. I thought you were I thought you were talking about just the conversation with a 6-year-old about transgenderism.
No, I'm talking about the idea that we can force somebody to be 18 to get a tattoo, but we can allow a 5-year-old to start a dialogue about a sex change.
It's an abomination, period.
But this is one of the biggest challenges we have as a party, right? Because if someone takes that position, that is okay, I don't even know where to start talking to them. Because, and I'm serious.
Where's common ground? I mean, there can't be.
Well, and that's why I can't believe that we've developed into a system where two parties, roughly of equal size, see the world completely differently. There's no way that's true. Right?
I always said it was a third, and a third. And I don't know if that's quite right as far as ideology, that there was a third that are extreme left, a third that are extreme right. And then there's the rest of us that are in the middle. I think it's more like maybe 20% left, 20% right, 60 in the middle.
I think 60.
The 20% on the left are the loudest, and the 20% on the right are the loudest. And the 60% in the middle just... I don't know what to say.
Well, we throw our hands in the air.
Yeah, I think
we
to
watch
some
other things.
Degree, absolutely. And it just it's so frustrating. I always often say, I just wish we could take the ultra right and the ultra left and put them in one of those WWE cage matches and let them go at it, and the rest of us could live happily ever after. So yeah, it's the division, and the division is created by the government. I mean, they've created this division, and
is that true? Are you sure that's true?
I believe that they've pushed the media to cover some of these events and make them as divisive as possible. Absolutely.
Yeah, the media is the problem.
And again, the advertising background. In the news stations. I worked for news stations. I've been selling news stations. I remember when Bernie Goldberg's book Media Bias came out. My dad told me about that book, 20 years ago when it came out, I think. And to read that now and how the overt bias was kind of placed in these newscasts, and to look at the newscasts now where it is just blatant bias in your face. Mm-hmm. They don't even try and hide it anymore. And it's a problem because when you control the media, you control the message. And it goes back to what discussions you and I have had about Republicans' poor messaging. The Democrats have changed the name abortion to reproductive health rights.
Sure.
How in the world is killing a baby reproductive health rates? But there they have it. They changed the new Green Deal to the Inflation Reduction Act, and it passed.
Vernacular matters.
It matters.
I mean, look, I've said this before. The Republican Party is a sales organization with a marketing problem, and the Democratic Party is a marketing organization, the marketing organization with a sales problem. And the reason they have a sales problem is because I think most relatively moderate people, and definitely most Republicans, view what they're really selling. When you get that box in the mail, you're going to be very disappointed about what's in it. Yeah, they promise us the moon, right? Particularly when it comes to entitlements and social welfare programs and things of that nature. I have a deep hesitation when it comes to programs that provide money or anything of value for nothing in exchange. Because when you look at, so for example, the inflationary dynamics, which, there are some indications that things are dying down a little bit. I don't know if that's true or not, but for at least the past 18 to 24 months, we've known exactly what caused the inflation. When you inject $4 trillion of unearned money into an economy completely disconnected from value, of course the value of a dollar goes down. Of course you're going to pay more for milk and bread and gas. That's just reality. But most people, the average voter, doesn't see it that way. They see it as, ooh, free money. And what that tells me is that there's a lot of educating that needs to take place in our society about the responsibility that comes with the freedoms that we have. And that responsibility equates to you earning your way. It must be earned. You must find ways to provide and add value to your families, your employers. You can't be someone who's just drug around as a dependent forever. That's what children are for. And frankly, I think we let them be dependent entirely too long. No, I'm certainly not one that kicks my 18-year-old out on the curb, the day of their birthday. But at the end of the day, if I do my job correctly, my 12, 13, 14-year-old is going to start to mature to the same degree I did as a kid. I mean, I spent, 9 hours a day all summer long and on nights and weekends while I was in school working a fryer at a McDonald's, since I was 15 years old. That's what I did, because what choice did you have? If you want things, you have to be able to go out and get them. So the underlying point I'm trying to make is that we need to get better as a society, creating opportunities for people to be responsible for themselves and show them rewards when they do so. So when we talk about inflation and how the economy becomes largely predicated upon what the government does and does not do versus what you and I do and what the people we know do, I think it says a lot about the direction our country's going. And it's not all good. It's not good news, right? There's a dependence there that is very, very dangerous. So that's kind of my attitude on it.
Well, and there are people that are trying to do too much too, and the good people that really want to help the cause, they've got to pick a topic and work on that. And, that going back to the precinct project, that's what I realized, is election integrity important? Absolutely. Is voter registration important? Absolutely. Do we need an election and judge of elections and poll workers? Absolutely. Volunteers to walk and knock on doors? Absolutely. But where the rubber meets the road is at the committee level. And when I realized that, I tried to, and it's funny because we just talked about all this, we went off on a few little tangents there and about, some topics. And that's okay. And that's okay because, this is a conversational type thing. But when I put my committee man hat on, that changes. It's not about Dominion voting machines anymore. It's not about Russia, China, Ukraine. It's not even about Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. It's about what do we have to do to fill all the seats in our current committee to help our neighboring communities. For instance, Bridgeville is part of Chartiers Valley School District. We have no operating committee in Bridgeville. Collier, Heidelberg, and Scott Township are covered. We have no one in Bridgeville. We've got to change that, and we've got until May, the primary, to do so. And I've got a couple people lined up, but again, it needs to be changed. So the people that have built their committee and their community need to look at their neighbors and say, okay, they need some help now. I'm helping South Fayette. I'm helping Bridgeville. That has to happen. Once you get the full committee membership, you have to have a plan. And the plan is to reach out to all unlikely voters and get them a mail-in ballot application in their hands. That's it. That's the plan. Once they mail in the application, there will be follow-up, which the committee members they'll have the phone numbers. Hey, Mrs. Jones, you filled out an application. You got your ballot. We really need you to send that in before Election Day. And then be at the polls and have something fun. Do something fun there. You should be there trying to collect as many email addresses and names and contacts as you can. The one thing your voter list doesn't give you is their email. You have their address, you have their phone number. You can walk and knock. You can talk to them that way. But it's great to have an email where you can just send 40, 50 people an email. How many people have that email list put together? Well, if we don't have even have a committee in certain neighborhoods, there's nothing. None of that is even started. So that's what I try and stay singularly focused on. In our meetings, I've got everybody trained that we don't talk about anything about anything other than voter outreach and how do we get our candidates, all of our candidates, over the finish line on Election Day. Mm-hmm. So there's no, did you hear what was on Hannity last night? There's none of that. That's a conversation for another day. We spend too much time talking about what was on Hannity last night. We can't control what was on Hannity last night. I'm not an IT guy. I don't know the inner workings of a Dominion voting machine.
Yep.
And unless you do, you shouldn't be talking about it because there's nothing you can do about it.
That's right.
Pick something that you are skilled at and do that. The messaging. If you're a marketing person and you feel you have pretty good messaging, great. Become your committee chair. And you write all the correspondence with your voters. Mm-hmm. You can do a lot. You can generate a lot of interest. We talked about this before. I've had people say, well, I sent out letters and nobody came to our meeting. Your messaging was terrible. I don't know what else to tell you. Mm-hmm. Because when I did it, we had 29. I've got 29 people on my list so far that have attended our meetings. I'm glad you mentioned that. So that's so important.
This is an important one. Obviously your work with the Precinct Project is really, really important. It's one of the key reasons why I wanted to have you on. But the other reason is because I've watched your committee develop since it started. And I frankly think you could teach a master class on how to start a Republican committee in a Democrat-dominated district. So when we talk about things like bad messaging, right? What is good messaging? What do people need to start thinking about and saying in order to elicit more volunteers to get engaged?
Well, when I rate commercials for just general advertisers, I try and find what is, how do I reach out on an emotional level to the target? For instance, someone that's looking to buy a new bed. What are they most interested in? Is it a pain factor? Do they wake up in the morning with back pain? Could be. They can't sleep, insomnia, that if maybe they had a better bed. You've got to put yourself in the mind of those people and say, okay, what's important to them? And there's more to it than that. Sometimes it's the time of day. I did some research on my mattress store. Most people that plan to buy a mattress in the next 12 months in a high index watch late night TV. So 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. Think about it. You're in bed with your wife. You've already got your glass of water. You've already done your last bathroom break of the day, and you're in bed watching the 10 o'clock news. And I run an ad for a brand new comfy mattress, and your back won't hurt tomorrow morning, and you'll get a really good night's sleep and feel refreshed for the next day. It's just sometimes common sense. So it's no different for the messaging of a political campaign. The three topics in this past election: inflation, which includes gas prices. Safety was in there somewhere. Well, the national debt's always there, but that's part of inflation. We're just feeding that. But that was kind of it. I mean, that was the story. And you had our gubernatorial candidate, Doug Mastriano, running commercials talking about veteran suicide, which was an incredibly important thing. I'm not going to deny that. But he ran a TV commercial during the Steeler game that talked about veteran suicide, not gas prices, not the fact that the guy that he was running against is the one that threatened to sue you if you opened your business. That was the story. And we just swung and missed. And that was a $130,000 TV commercial with the wrong message. Mm-hmm. The $130,000 TV commercial that usually costs about $30,000, but for political got jacked up to ridiculous amount. And then to run the totally off message, it's inexcusable. But there's more that goes into that too. I mean, he didn't get any back. Nobody helped him in the party. The Republican Party walked away from him, so he was on his own, and he hired people that I guess thought they knew what they were doing. That was the most recent example of really, really poor messaging. You can do everything right, and then you get to that point, and you've ruined it. And that's not, there's several examples of that. There was a local state race that they spent $215,000 in. And they bought the 4 zones that were inside that district, the 4 cable zones, and the commercial schedules were exactly the same in each zone. Now, of course, on the FCC website, you can go and look at all the schedules that have been placed for any political candidate. So this candidate had part of their territory was Aliquippa. Another part was Nevillewood. And they ran the same schedule in the Aliquippa zone as they did in the Nevillewood zone. Now, with $215,000, you should be able to buy some of the most high-profile stuff in every one of those zones. You should be on the Penguin games. You should be in the Aliquippa zone. You should be on the NBA. You should be, the final episode of Walking Dead. I'm talking about things where there are a lot of eyeballs, where you're going to get a lot of reach. They should have all been explored, but they weren't. The schedules were all the same. And it was basically whoever hired this ad agency called their Comcast rep and said, hey, I got $215,000. I need to buy 4 zones, put a package together for me and send it to me. Now, right. If that's what you're doing as an ad agency, if that's all the work you're putting in, then there's no other excuse. They were exactly the same schedules in all 4 zones. And none of them included Penguin games. None of them included streaming advertising. None of them included any Monday Night Football or Thursday Night Football. With $215,000 at your disposal, those are the first things you buy. And then you put the rest of it on Fox News and Fox Business. They were on CNN. So,
how big of a problem do you think that is statewide?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, and I know it's like a weird little thing. I'm in the advertising business, so this is a big deal to me. Most people wouldn't even think of this, but when you add the wrong messaging and then the lazy buying, how do you expect it to work? You've got to hit on all cylinders on these buys. You've got to have the right messaging. You've got to get it to the right audience. You've got to do some work. I mean, the call to the cable rep should have been, I want a list of every high-profile program that you have running in these 4 zones that you have available. Some of them get sold out. You might not have been able to buy last, Walking Dead. Fine. Right. Or maybe it was sold out in Collier, Bridgeville, but you could buy it in the other 3 zones. Great. Well, give it to me. Give me a spot in that and all the other 3 zones, and I'll just find something else to buy in Collier. But those are the conversations that should have been had. And whoever put this buy in just mailed it in. And they were being counted on by the candidate to get them across the finish line. So there are issues.
And you don't have to name names, but who makes that? Who makes those decisions?
Well, I don't know. There's a local group that funded the state rep campaigns that, for whatever reason, I don't know if there's a connection between them and the ad agency, if it's their buddy or their brother's ad agency or how it works. But they ought to revisit who they're hiring to promote their candidates, because that was the laziest buy I've seen in my 25, 26 years in the media business.
Well, what it tells me is that there was no vested interest in making sure
Nope.
that the right buy was made, right? So that tells me that it's more about the money.
Well, the agency gets 15% of the $215,000.
Right.
Okay. Hey, Comcast rep, send me a package. And I've been dealing with this all my life. The agencies that I worked with when I was on the station side that would tell me to send them a package, or some of them, even better yet, and these are well-known ad agencies, that would have me put a package together for them, and then I had to print it out on color paper and bind it and make 6 copies and drive it down to their office and hand it to them. But there was to be no mention on the cover page or anything that it came from my station. And then they would take that and present it to clients. Now, what do you think's in that package? I got to hit my quota on Ring of Honor Wrestling, so I got to put that in there. Oh, man, I got to get – that's right. I need some digital because I'm $10,000 short of my digital budget. So we're going to put that in there. Filled with garbage. That's not why you hire an agency. The agency is supposed to, see through all that and say, look, here's what I need. I need qualitative information on people that plan to buy a mattress or Republicans or whatever it is. I want to know which programs has the highest number of those targets. And then we can talk about rates. Then we can talk about ratings. But I want to see where I want to fish first before I look at rates and ratings and packages. I won't look at a package. I don't want a package. It's called an avail. They send you a list of all the programs and how much the rate is on each one and what the rating is on each one. And I go through them line after line after line and identify, I've already identified which programs I want from the qualitative information and research that I've done. But that's how it's got to be done. Mm-hmm. Some of it is conceptual. Some of it is you buy the NBA and Aliquippa because it's a good conceptual buy. But most of it is based on the research that these research companies do to tell you where the audience is. And, there are agencies that don't use it. So there are issues across the board. We could talk about this for 2 hours, honestly. For all the issues and problems that we have. But again, when I put my committee hat on, all that goes away. And I focus on, what do I have to do to make my community more Republican, to close the gap between the Democrats and hopefully at some point start to beat them again. Maybe mail-in ballots is the answer. We will see. But that's what I concentrate on. And then with my role as the development coordinator with Karen Paulette for developing the committees, I want to try and give that excitement, enthusiasm to the various current committee chairs and anyone that would like to step up from a community that doesn't have a committee working and say, I'll be chair, and I've got a co-chair or vice chair, and let's get this thing started.
That, the biggest difference between the two is accountability. And what we have now with organizations like the Precinct Project and a handful of other organizations that are making an effort to improve the odds for Republican candidates at a grassroots level is largely that is taking responsibility for the future of our party. So what I want to do, Lenny, is give you an opportunity to tell people how can they get involved with this?
Well, the easiest way is to go to the RCAC website. So it's the Republican Committee of Allegheny County. And you'll find a link to my email there. Well, you can really contact anyone, but as a development committee person, at least a contact, along with my friend Karen Paulette, you can reach out to me. The first step would be that I would let me know if you have your voter's card, what district, ward that you reside in. And then I can let you know if that committee seat, man or woman, is open. If it's not, if it's filled, you could be appointed an associate member, which would give you the rights to vote on all committee business. So if you were going to vote on a chair and a vice chair, you would have a vote. I suggest everyone, whether they can run and get elected as committee man or committee woman or become appointed, that's great. But if you can't, become an associate member. Your value is just as much as an associate member. You just can't vote in the countywide elections for a countywide chair or vice chair. So that would be the first step. The second step, I would look to see if there is no committee membership there at all. We would meet it face to face, and it's not really a vetting process, but I would want to know if you were willing to become the leader of that committee in your area. I mean, like I said, Bridgeville, we need a chair, a vice chair, and I believe 4 committee men and 4 committee women. So if you raise your hand and say, I'd love to chair the committee, you're the chairman, as long as you're not, a crazy person, I think you're in, but there is a meeting that happens. We do want to at least vet some of the candidates and make sure, we're not putting somebody in that's there to talk about conspiracy theories or whatever else.
Right.
I mean, this needs to be committee business and nothing more, talk about that after the meeting. So that's the first step. We do have, I don't know if you're familiar with Scott Pressler. I know you are, and I think most of the people that see this are familiar with Scott. Scott's going to be here on February 8th, and we're going to have an event at the Kennedy Fire Hall from 6 to 8:30. And Scott's new push is for mail-in ballot plans, a strategy to secure the Republican mail-in ballots. But we're also going to have a committee building event there as well. I'll be there for the entire event with appointment forms that we can get you appointed, or at least get you in touch with your current chairman or vice chair to have them appoint you as an associate member or committee man or committee woman if the seat's available. So, we will also have the election integrity. Gina Paulus will be there. If you're interested in becoming a poll watcher, poll worker, judge of elections, again, I encourage the people that are worried about election integrity to please do that. Volunteer to sit inside one of the polls where you think that some of the, most likely cheating, if there's cheating, is going to happen. Get involved. We need doers. I can't say it enough. We need doers, not complainers. Complainers sit at home and watch, political talk all day. That's not what we do here. There's somebody else out there, I hope, in the Republican Party that's going to fix all that stuff.
Well, I don't know a bigger doer than Scott Pressler.
Well,
this is someone who's dedicated his life to, improving something that he believes he has the ability to improve.
And that's why I'm encouraged by his visit. I really believe that he is going to, through his enthusiasm, and people that know him and are fans of him know that he's a doer. So when he asks you to do something, it's not something that he can't do and hasn't done himself. So I'm encouraged. I hope we can get, if we could get another 100 committee members signed up and get up to 800 from 700, that would be a win. We need to get this done by January of 2024. I'd love to have it done earlier. If anybody wants to help, we're all ears. But January 2024, I mean, I don't need to talk to you about how important the 2024 election is.
Yeah.
So we better have our ducks in a row early.
Yeah.
Early.
I agree.
December of 2023, right after the election is that'd be great too.
When's the Scott Pressler event again?
February 8th, 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. The Kennedy Volunteer Fire Department Hall. I don't have. Oh wait, I think I may have the address right here. Hold on.
I could find it and put it in the podcast. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
And about the precinct project and getting involved again. So a visit to our CAC's website. What is that URL off the top of your head?
I do not know off the top of my head.
Okay. All right. I'll put that on a link in your bio as well.
Okay.
Along with contact information for you so that people can reach out to you. Who knows? May end up with some new fans as a result of the podcast. We should get Scott to do this podcast with you at some point to promote his visit if he's got the time. Well, we'll hit him up.
Yeah, we'll certainly look at that.
Done. Okay. Very good. Hey, Lenny, listen, you're a true patriot. I love what you're doing. I love you.
I do.
It's good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, good to see you.
Glad you're here. All right, buddy. Take care.
Thanks again. Thanks for the invite.
Thanks a lot. All right. We'll see you.